Hi there. My name is Jack Rome, and on behalf of Awakening Mind Films, I'm so excited to welcome you to a conversation with the co founders, the filmmakers, the production team of Awakening Mind. Here we have Bill Free, Leif Heimbold, and Dan Schmidt all here to talk with us about their experiences creating these films, and especially since part two is now out in the documentary series. So, before we get into the origins of the documentary series and how you guys came together to create this, I want to just ask you how it feels right now to have part two out, especially since it hasn't been too long and there's, at least from where I've seen it, a great reception from folks. People really excited that got to see part one and are now seeing part two, but also maybe folks that are discovering Awakening Mind with part two. So I want to ask each of you this about how it's been. But first, let's start with you, Bill. And then after that, we can go to Leif and then finally Dan. So, Bill, I'd love to hear, how has the feeling been since you've released part two, and what's the reception been like on your end?
Yeah, thank you, Jack, for putting this together. And I'm super happy to be joined with my compadres, filmmakers, and editors, the superstars for Awakening Mind Films. We couldn't do it without these guys. And I'm very appreciative that we were led to the singular purpose to put these films together. And what I'm finding from part two is the same as part one. It feels like a liftoff experience. It's exciting to see the number of people that are engaged in the film. Starting with the first film that we launched a little over a year ago, has 2.6 million views and thousands of comments, and just the comments from film one got us really revved up. We were really going, "Oh my God, this has a really resonant reception." Very excited about that. The title of that one is "Know Thyself," part one, and then it's followed with "The Mind Unveiled," and it hasn't been a month. It has over 200,000 views. It is the comments on the YouTube channel, because we put it up on YouTube. Part of our conversation in the very beginning was we want to have a film that's available for anyone that has a device. So if no one is excluded, and Dan first put that idea together with his Samadhi films, part one and part two, which he's a super generous guy. He sort of contaminated us with that generosity, and we wanted to have that same generosity with Awakening Mind Films. And part two is people are having awakening experiences. They're going deeper in their understanding of what awakening is, and what when we say the mind unveiled, what that is. So I am super stoked and excited, very happy to be part of this production. And oh my God, I'm just really grateful to have the team that we have that puts it all together and makes it the experience that the audience has.
Well, that's so great to hear that it's been exciting for you to see the awakening experiences, to see the comments, to see the positive reception to part two, building off of part one. And, I also want to thank you guys for having this conversation and doing this interview, because I think it's really special when people that have really benefited from something like this documentary series, and will continue to get to hear directly from you all about what your experiences is like on the behind the scenes end of things. And so with that in mind, Leif, I want to turn to you and ask you, what's your experience been now that part two is out? How has the reception been for you, and what does it mean to you to now be into part two of this three-part series?
Thanks, Jack. And yeah, I am also pleased to be with these guys. They're such a wonderful group of guys to work with. And this project for me has just been fantastic. And when we started the first one, we didn't know what kind of response we were going to get. We just didn't know. And I kind of came into this cold, never having done this kind of work before in this area. And next thing you know, we're getting thousands of views and then hundreds of thousands of views. And then when we hit 1 million, we're like, all right, this has got some legs. People want to see this stuff. And that's the way I feel. I want to see this stuff. I joined this project because this is kind of paralleling my own spiritual path. And part two is just the extension of part one, and it's also getting the same traction. People are into it and we have the same kind of growth pattern. So I think it's going to reach as many people as the first one, hopefully more, because we all believe that awakening is the solution, right? This is what's going to save our world, so to speak. And so I'm just so pleased to be a part of it. We're already working on part three, and we'll talk more about that. But this is really, really exciting to have the second one out. And I think I'm going to leave it at that because I know we'll be talking about it more. Thanks.
Sure. Well, thank you, Leif, for giving your perspective on how things are going. And I know I speak for more than just myself when I say that I'm also excited to dig into the process and see what's coming with part three. Dan, I want to move to you because you are no stranger to seeing the legs of videos, films, and movies that you create, especially with this mission in mind. So with part two out now for you, what does it mean to you? What's your perspective? How are you processing this stage of the project?
Yeah, thanks, Jack. So for me, the trajectory of the film seems to be like full-on launch. It seems to be, really serving its purpose. Like Bill was saying, like we're getting hundreds of thousands of views just within the first month. And it's, that's just YouTube. We've yet to hit Gaia as well. We've also, like the synergy, there's just so many people who love these films and, they're getting involved, like on the Awaken the World site. We have a lot of translators who are translating. We're going to have the film in over 20 different languages, probably around 24 languages. So the films are, really resonating with people to the point where they're willing to donate their time to do these translations. And I just feel, the feedback that I've got so far is, people are having direct experiences. They're, the transmissive effect seems to be there in the film. And so, people like we have a meditation self-inquiry center. I'm getting a lot of feedback from people who've attended the retreats, who've been doing, the deep work on their on disidentifying from their conditioned character, and virtually everyone is saying that the film is sort of a reminder or taking them deeper in some way, and seems to be serving its purpose as a pointer to who we truly are.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate you mentioning the film as a reminder and as a pointer, and that folks are saying that. It really puts into perspective what kind of role these films can play. I mean, certainly they are beautiful to look at. They're really nice to listen to. There are so many wonderful voices that we get to hear from in both films, and I'm sure we'll just continue in part three. But beyond that, beyond where it lives on YouTube as something on social media, I think what you're talking about is that it is a way of using the digital world, digital tools we have as a way to integrate that with a person's practice. And I think that's really profound. And we can go into more detail with that later, but I do want to take a second because, a lot of folks that are going to be watching this, this might be their first time getting to really meet you guys in this way. And they may not know how Awakening Mind Films came to be. Maybe they donated to the crowdfund. Maybe they are just finding out about it now. But I want to rewind a little bit and go to the beginning of this project. And maybe we can go in that same order that we had. So, Bill, I'd love to hear from you. What was the beginning of this project like? Can you talk about some of the origins and the inspiration that led to what we have now?
Sure. It's like so many other parts of the making of these films and what we do. As the co-founder of the Center for Awakening, and a co-founder of Awakening Mind Films, I was the director of the Center for Awakening when it was known as the Teachers of God Foundation, and I was looking for a video guy about 4 years ago when I met Leif Heimbold, and I put a feeler out to our spiritual community. We have a mailing list of about 20,000, and Leif just happened to be on the list, and he responded to a looking for a video guy, and he sends me a video of a NASA launch of, from Cape Canaveral and it's this amazing short documentary, probably 10 minutes. But it was way, way over the level of what I was looking for. And I'm going, oh my God, I can't afford this guy. But we were also getting ready to start some conferences. This is right before COVID. We're getting ready to start some conferences. And so I contacted Leif, and he helped us just as a pro bono. He helped us put some videos together to promote the first conferences for Pure Presence conferences, which is another thing that I started about 4 years ago. And he helped us out with that. And he said, I kind of would like to do something with the Course in Miracles or some spiritual documentary if you are interested. And I had just finished working on a documentary film with a friend. We did a 2-month trek across the United States, and I filmed him with my iPhone for the whole 2-month period. And we did that documentary. So I felt like I was spent on the documentary. And I said, I don't know what I would do it on. I just did one with this other guy. And so we just kind of put it on pause for a minute. And then about a year and a half later, I had just finished reading this Rhonda Byrne newest book called The Greatest Secret, which is the truth of awakening. It's really has great message in it, and many people in it I know personally. Muji is in it, Rupert Spira, Francis Lucille, Shakti. All of them are in our cast for Awakening Mind Films. But I started contacting these people as I was inspired through this book and bringing them to our conferences for Pure Presence conferences that we just started when COVID hit. And after about 18 months, we had 4 conferences behind us. And after reading Rhonda's book, I'm going, oh my God, I know exactly what to do a documentary film on. All these teachers that are teaching in our conferences. So I contacted Leif, and he said yes. And then he brought his brother Eric in, because he's like a top-notch cinematographer, cameraman. And we had that part of our team. And then I started, Leif was saying, I don't really have all the skill set to do everything that I think this film wants to do. And that reminded me of a video, an interview I watched on Buddha at the Gas Pump, where Dan Schmidt was being interviewed by Rick Archer. And he was talking about these samadhi films that he had done that I had just watched. And I went, oh my God, I know exactly who to bring in for the fractal animation stuff. So I contacted Dan Schmidt. He met the guys, and we had an instant connection with each other. And we asked Dan if he would be a full partner in this whole production, and he came in as a full partner, and we have never looked back. It's just been the most uh, uh, collaborative, cohesive experience and relationship that I've ever had with anyone. And so it remains there. We have a great time doing what we do. We respect each other to the nth degree, and love each other. It's just been a really great experience for all of us.
That's wonderful to hear. It's amazing to see and hear about just how you all came together, and the way that you just happening to listen to Buddha at the Gas Pump and getting introduced to Dan, and then having your own wonderful experience with his filmmaking. And then also, you and Leif connecting, but it not quite being the right time, because you just needed to get to that point of reading The Greatest Secret to kind of have a piece of insight into what you could really do the film about. And I think that's a wonderful explanation of kind of how things like this come together. And hopefully for, those of us that are listening to this and most likely inspired by this creation process, that we can recognize these are the kinds of things that we can look for in our lives, is where are these synchronicities happening, and where could we just, let me peek behind that door. So I'm really glad that you peeked behind those doors. Leif, I do want to turn to you, because Bill did mention that you had quite a background in a different style of filmmaking, but nevertheless, you did mention that it was your own personal spiritual practice that was sort of in parallel to this filmmaking process. Can you speak about the origins from your perspective, and what got you excited and inspired to create these in the first place?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. And you're kind of wondering, how did I get on Bill Free's mailing list, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I was kind of based in science. A lot of the work I did was for defense contractors, for NASA, a lot of space science, that kind of stuff. And I've always appreciated the value of science. I have a science degree in geology, and so that was kind of my background. Very little spirituality. And along the way, I had one of those dark night of the souls that we explore in all these films that we're making. And for me, it was, I had a daughter who was born with a bad heart, and we did everything we could to try to save her. We moved to Boston from Colorado, Boston Children's Hospital, and she was in intensive care for over a year. And every day it was a matter of life and death. We didn't know if she was going to live or die that day. And that went on for a long, long time. And along the way, I started asking questions, and science wasn't giving me the answers. It really wasn't helping me. And my wife started going to church, and I went with her, and we went quite a bit. And I started asking questions there, and I just found out I had a lot more questions. And I was reading, at one point I was reading Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now, and he started talking about the Course in Miracles. He was referring to that. And I was like, well, what is this Course in Miracles? And I got involved in that in a bit and started researching that. I read the whole book, which is the hardest book I've ever read in my life. But it was fascinating, and there were so many parallels off of that. And Bill was one of them. And there was a community of guys. This was also around COVID. And so a lot of this stuff was Zoom was becoming available. So I was able to kind of peer into these other groups. And I was kind of admiring Bill. I was watching all these things he was doing. I'm like, Bill knows what he's doing. Like, this Zoom stuff is really cool. And Bill's the guy who knows it. And so when that ad came up looking for a video producer, I was like, well, why not? What do I have to lose? And we connected, and it's just been. I love Bill. I love spending time with him. He, I consider both these guys, my mentors, my teachers. And awakening is something that I've come to learn about. and I'm on a spiritual path, and that, I don't want to talk about goals, but that is where I'm headed. And this whole production, this whole series is really mirroring my development, my spiritual growth, and I just love it. It's so fulfilling to me, and reading the comments, what other people have to say, I see that it's helping them too, and that is just wonderful. So I think that's all I have to say about that. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, and really appreciate, you sharing sort of not just the origins of how you got to know Bill and took that leap of faith in a way to say, what have I got to lose? Let me just try this video production in a realm that I haven't been in. But also the origins of your practice and finding yourself on the conscious spiritual path, you might say. And I do want to appreciate you talking about reading A Course in Miracles. I have found that to be the case as well, and profoundly helpful book in my own practice. So appreciate you mentioning that too. Glad that we have some of that stuff in common. Yeah, I do want to give Dan, I want to give you a chance to talk about when you came into the process, because you were already creating films. You just like Bill said, he saw your Samadhi film, and that was part of the inspiration to reach out to you. So can you talk a bit about your perspective at the beginning of this process, working with these guys and working on Awakening Mind, and perhaps even, what new experiences it was bringing to you at the beginning?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think for me, I was just working on my own films. I have a meditation center here as well. So, I've been had my consciousness in two different worlds, in working on the films and then having these physical retreats. And Bill just came along, and it was just sort of almost an energetic thing. It was just Bill's enthusiasm and energy was so alive and infectious, so really for me it was just there was something in me that just immediately said yes, even though I didn't even quite know what it was we were going to be doing. I just felt like this guy showed up, and he's just kind of really alive about this, and I felt his passion for awakening, and just the fact that he was coming from the with the Teachers of God Foundation, Course in Miracles, kind of the Christian side of things. And I felt there was the Awaken the World crowd has been typically more on the Eastern side of, people who are kind of into Buddhism and Hinduism and Vedanta and that type of thing. And that also excited me. I felt like there's a merging together here that's possible, sort of a meeting of worlds that could happen. And I feel, beneath all of these traditions, there is just this one truth that, all of this is coming, coming towards, the Course in Miracles. All of that seems to point eventually on someone's path to self-inquiry and awakening. And these, even though the language may be different, there's this one sort of perennial truth that underlies all of these traditions. So I really felt that, and I felt the resonance of that. And then meeting Leif as well. Both Bill and Leif just had skills and energies that I didn't have myself, and I just felt there was this possibility of us working together to just bring something that was different and new. And the fact that Bill knew all these people as well was exciting, and that the possibility of drawing all these different teachers together, I felt was very exciting as well.
Wow, that's really cool to hear that it was the blending and something that was new in terms of sort of, maybe we could say, Western terminology. Certainly, A Course in Miracles is radical in its own right, as we're all aware. But that does bring me to a question that I was really excited to ask you guys after watching part two, particularly, which is that, you have so many different folks, delivering messages in the film, and it comes together in such a way that it's so cohesive, for the viewer. But nevertheless, like you just mentioned, Dan, like the backgrounds of all of these people is wide enough that I can imagine it's quite a task to sort of bring this range of perspectives together. So this could be a question for any of you guys. Bill, maybe we can start with you since the other two guys just got to speak. But how do you bring these range of perspectives together to ensure that there's a cohesive message in each film?
This would be a better question for Leif, because he's sort of he's the starting skeleton of these films, and somehow, and I really feel that consciousness is producing these films through each one of us, and each one of us acknowledges a movement, and if grace itself telling us intuitively, well, what to do, where to go, who to interview, what questions to ask, and we've watched the questions change within hours of the next interview. So it has a felt sense that this is being done through our whatever our skill sets are. But that question really would be something that would be in Leif's court, because he has become a master at being able to thread and sew all of these different aspects of a singular or a diverse theme that it captures us when Leif hands it off to Dan and for me to view, because these two guys are the master editors. When he hands it off to us, we're both going, "Oh my God, Leif, this is amazing!" And then Dan takes it and he makes it like supercharged amazing. Mm-hmm. So I would ask Leif how he does that.
That's funny you say that, Bill, because it's actually really easy, because these teachers are so incredible. And they're all saying the same thing. When you ask them these questions, their answers are very similar. And so it's really the quality and the caliber of these teachers that we have. And what I do, just to talk about the process a bit, is we'll do an interview. We have a bunch of questions. We sit down, and that'll unfold how it unfolds. And then I'll kind of pull out some of the best bites that I think are really worthwhile that we want to, put in our timeline. And that kind of forms a story, and it drives itself. And that's one thing we've always been saying about this project is the universe is making this project. We're just facilitating it, and even the teachers who appear, they just appear. And getting someone, we'll never get this guy. His schedule's too tight. We ask him, Bill asks him, and boom, we're in his living room a couple of weeks later. It's just unfolding, and it's so fun to watch, and it's just a beautiful process. And I love, I don't know this stuff. I am the novice here, so I try to make it accessible to people on my same kind of level. And when I pass it off to Dan, Dan does know this stuff, and he knows how to bridge the gaps, and he does that with his amazing narrative skills and his script writing skills. And that's kind of how that process goes.
Wow, that is really, I didn't think about that, but it makes so much sense that you would be in such a great position to do that work, because you really have, put yourself in the seat as learner, and that I can imagine, you're, and I'm a editor myself, so I kind of know the feeling of sitting there with all this footage in front of you, and you're probably just like, here are all my teachers. Sort of like a reverse classroom experience in a way. So thank you for sharing that. I think that gives us a really good sense of like, how does this come together? Well, it comes together in the way that a learner would need it to come together. and it forms a cohesive story on its own. Just like you said, the universe is creating this, and you're facilitating it as a learner. So I really appreciate that. You did mention though about when Dan comes into the process and the script writing and the narrative skills, not to mention the score, which also is plays a huge part in the narrative as well as the imagery as well. But Dan, I'd love to ask you, what is that process like for you? I mean, your voice coming on at the beginning, like the way it does, it feels like I'm in a guided meditation, and certainly you have that experience, so I'm not surprised. But can you talk about when in the process you're writing that script and how that comes together?
Sure. So, yeah, for me, as Leif said, it's like he's put the skeleton together. He's sort of gathered all the the main interviews together, and it amazes me. When he hands it to me, it's so beautiful to work with that. Usually, my own flow and my own process is very different. So it's wonderful to be given this fully formed skeleton, and I just have to kind of put the meat on it and make it into flesh it out essentially. For me, I think the question, how do we bring together these this wide range of perspectives? To me, jumping into that, into the midst of all these different interviews, I really feel like there really is just one perspective. It's amazing to me how cohesive these interviews are, and how it's almost like one person is finishing another's sentences sometimes, literally. Like it's incredible when Leif brings these together. It seems like a single conversation. So for me, working with that, they're really just saying the same pointers that I give in my meditation retreats. I think everyone who has had an authentic awakening, they're all saying the same thing. They're just using their own creativity and their own anecdotes and experiences, but they're pointing at the exact same thing. So it only appears that there might be different perspectives, but it really is the one perennial teaching that's starting to come through. So in a way, it is easy. It is easy to when you see that, then there's for me just a trust that we are sort of finishing each other's sentences. We're all saying the same thing, and it's just this one message coming from these different mouths, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful to hear, and it makes a lot of sense that you're all, whether it's you, Dan, because obviously you speak in the film as well, not just with voiceover, but you also have an interview, and that full interview is also on your YouTube channel as well. And, you talk about how it's pretty easy actually to make it cohesive. All of you have kind of talked about how there's an ease to it. Nevertheless, you do get quite thoughtful and mindful and very present and just full responses from folks. And at least the way it sounds to me when I watch and when I listen to it, it's because all of them are coming from that place, that same one perspective, we might say, that you really feel like when I hear them finishing each other's sentences, it feels so natural. It feels like a script they wrote together or something. Bill, I know that when it comes to the actual filming of these interviews, that you're the one who is, sitting right next to the camera, as we can see on the behind the scenes photos on your website. And, you've got those questions. And I know you said that the questions sometimes change hours before or just before. And I salute the flexibility, but there's also the actual practice of eliciting such thoughtful responses from your cast. And can you talk about what that interviewing process is even like, and how their answers come out of them in such a way as to make it into a film in such a cohesive manner?
Yeah, the interview is like magic. I'm not kidding. The interview space each one that we've done, and we've done them all over the world. We've done them everywhere, in people's living rooms, in hotels, in monasteries. We've done them in many different environments. And it's like when you sit down with the interview, and Leif is he's got all the camera stuff, and whoever he's working with, and we work with different camera people, but he's like the master camera guy that's got all the setup. And then all of a sudden the interview sits down, and I have my iPad that's got a list of maybe 30, 40 questions on it for that specific person. And I don't know which ones I'm going to ask. And often I have an idea, and I just spin it with my finger, and I have an idea of what, we have starting ones, but then we don't know where it's going, because it changes as they're giving their response, their answer. It'll offer another question that'll turn into another answer, that'll turn into another question. And it's like each one is uniquely offering the screenplay that the editors will use, and we're just participating. I'm sort of, like I said, I'm being played, and it feels that way. And their answers are so powerful. Their answers are like, we're in this kind of a bubble experience, and we're being we're like in the vibe of what's being pointed to, and it's affecting us. And when we come out of those interview sessions, it's like you're on a buzz. There's this buzz happening from the interview itself. It's just it's amazing. It's just an amazing experience, and I'm super happy to be used in that way, even though I'm not in any of the films. I'm just really I'm vibing with the whole production.
That's awesome. I love hearing about, your immediate answer was just like, it's magic, and that you're in this bubble and you're being played, and you let it be what it's going to be. And you also mentioned that it affects you guys as you're doing this. And Leif, in particular, I wonder about you as someone who, as you said, you're in the learner's seat and you're learning from all of these teachers, and on your path. Can you share about, like, in these moments, like, and certainly you talked about in the editing process, but in these moments when you're with these teachers, with these folks who have wisdom to share, and a lot of it is very aligned with each other, how does that inform your spiritual practice? What has your spiritual practice changed? What effects have you experienced throughout this process as a learner?
I think, what's for me, I don't know these people. And so my first time meeting them is usually in the interview. I mean, there are some times where I'll do some research beforehand, but, a lot of them, I don't know who they are. And this is true with every interview, I feel completely uplifted during the interview, after the interview, like I'm just floating. And it's just, I remember a couple times with like Rupert Spira and Neil Donald Walsh, I really just had this, like, my own vibration level was lifted up. And it's just phenomenal. And these guys, they're just so good, And when you ask them these questions, they tell you about their awakening experiences and how, they weren't always awakened. That, you have to you got to get there one way or another. And it was amazing to me how they did it, And it's always like an amazing, like, learning process. Everyone's a little bit different, but they're all saying the same things. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but I just want to clarify that these people are so fun to be with, and it's just a beautiful experience with each and every one of them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It sounds like every time you're there, it's beyond a reminder. It's you're lifted into that vibrational state, as you mentioned, and That's very, very cool. And you also mentioned that there's, sometimes, and it sounds like even oftentimes, even if it might not come through in the final cut of the documentary, that they talk about their own awakening experience, because all of them at one point, had a journey to where they were at the time of filming. Um, Dan, perhaps this is a question for you, but could be open to everyone, because I know that all of you certainly care very deeply about this, but especially you, Dan, because of the films that you've made before the Awakening Mind series, that you're always very oriented in, this is not just a film. This is also sort of an experiential teaching device. So how can, as you mentioned earlier, how can we bring someone into awareness, give them, the opportunity for awakening as they're watching? And how do you understand the difference between, if there is a difference between, when someone is, talking about awakening in such a way that it's pointing to it, versus sharing an anecdote of their own personal experience? How does that personal experience and anecdote of their own story play into that very vital experiential pointing that the film absolutely does as well?
Mhm. I would say, and I think we alluded to it a little earlier about the transmissive effect. And so, so I can, sometimes I'm talking about, how the mind works, and giving little anecdotes from Zen or something like that. And those are great, they're good pointers. They're sort of showing how it all works in the mind, but there's something deeper that can come through sometimes, and this is the mysterious part. Sometimes it can come through, when someone's giving a personal anecdote, they're embodying the truth in that moment. So, and this, I think, is the magic that Bill was alluding to. Right? There's sometimes something that's ineffable when someone is really present and really authentic, speaking, from their source. Just that is the teaching. It doesn't matter even so much what's being said, but it's where that's coming from, and there's something ineffable, some truth that can start to come through, and sometimes it can come through in other ways, mysterious ways, like sometimes. Like in part one, we did these direct pointings, which, sometimes it's just the right words and the right music and the combination of pointers, and sometimes it'll just land for someone, and it might not land for everyone, and that's why we use different sort of techniques and different, and having these different voices is so beautiful, because one person may land with someone who's viewing, and another person maybe not, and it can be different teachers, different voices, having a different effect for different people.
Yeah, that is. I deeply resonate with that as a member of the audience. I can't remember who was saying it, but I believe it was in part two, and it was a woman, and she was talking about, sort of observing the habits that our ego continues to go through after an awakening experience without judgment, and seeing it as, well, it's fine. If the ego's the head, it's been, knocked off, and it's just rolling down the hill now. And all that's happening is you're just watching it roll down the hill. And maybe that didn't, hit for everyone, but it did for me. And I've heard that type of anecdote a lot before, where it's like, oh, it's just ego stuff running off. It's just old karma running off. Don't worry about it if you're still dealing with some addictive stuff, whatever. Just don't have judgment. But her sort of way of it is the viscerality, and in some ways sort of the vileness of it, in a way of like just imagining my head rolling down a hill and saying, "Oh, right, okay, it's fine," like it's all right there, and you have that kind of moment of relief. So I really appreciate you sharing that. That's why it feels like there might be personal anecdotes at times, and there might just be sort of more conventional pointers at other times, because it's much less about the form and much more about what is the transmissive effect that's happening. And I, as you were even saying that, it like brought that in for me. Um, I do want to follow up with you, though, because you talked about the form that it takes, and something that we haven't necessarily touched on yet, even though we've talked a lot about what people see in terms of the interviews and the cast, are these astounding visuals that you put together that are in the film. And, like any form, it might resonate for someone, it might not. But they are astounding nonetheless. And they feel to just depict something that if the ineffable could be depicted, this would be it. So can you talk about, and anyone feel free to share, but I know, Dan, you play a big part in putting these visuals together. How these visuals come together, what are your ideas? Is it that you're listening to someone speak and then you say, okay, this is what the visual needs to look like while they're saying this? Or do you have sort of like a bank of, storage archive of all these different images? How does that come together?
Mm-hmm. I would say there's no formula that I follow. I just kind of go by feel with all of it. I've been, you could say, almost like a fractal junkie in a way. I've been really drawn to these, in the ancient traditions, they have these yantras, which are, they have a sort of transmissive effect as well, and a deep symbolic meaning, a deep archetypal meaning as well. So a lot of these fractals are sort of informed by that as well, and it's a combination of exploration and sometimes stumbling upon something that just works or is beautiful, and I love to explore technology, so I just play with these fractal programs, and now with AI, there's some of these new tools where it becomes very easy to create images that can be animated in different ways. So I'm just open to utilizing whatever tools come along, and and I, again, it really is just the feeling that it produces, and sometimes it is an exploration. There's definitely no formula to it, and but when you've hit it, it's like, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you, Bill and Leif, do you guys sort of receive some of the imagery from Dan, after he's already chosen them and felt like, oh, this is the one? How does that hit for you when you guys see that part of the process? I'm sure it's similar to when you hear the score as well, but I'd love to hear how it illustrates things for you after you've already gone through the interview process.
It's Leif and Dan, they work as a team, as an editing team, and we have weekly meetings. We meet every week, and we have for a couple of years now. We meet every week. We might skip one or once in a while, but we are very committed to this filming project, this film experience that we're absolutely passionate about, because we feel like a conduit that is sharing this with humanity, that's sharing this with consciousness that is now timed itself to awaken in a big way in this generation. So I feel that that this is the time to do this. And I'm just, after the interview, and of course Dan and Leif are very generous in collaborating with the three of us. And what do you think about this? What do you think about this? We all watch the different segments many times and help critique it and look for flaws, look for things that really may not belong. And even though I'm the minor editor, the minor, and I'm not an editor, but the minor editing component, they give me a generous space for feedback. But it's those two that are the experts in the editing And I would just hand this off to Leif and ask him the same question.
All right, I'll just take it right from there. And, maybe to know a little bit more about where we are, we're all in different places. Dan's up in Canada. I'm in Newport, Rhode Island. Bill's in Maine. And what we do is, Dan and I have the high quality footage, right? And so we can pass back and forth a small editing file that can be emailed. And so if I, open up Dan's latest edit, boom, it just pops up in front of me as long as I have all the materials. And so we can make changes and say, Dan, what do you think about this? And then it goes back and forth. And that seems to work really well. And the fun thing is, this last one, part 2, we just let Dan go. It was so good. It was evolving. We're like, yeah, keep going, keep filling it up. And I think we were like an hour and 20 minutes. It was like, oh man, that's a little much. We gotta bring it back down. And so I took a whack at it and I got it down to under an hour. But, Dan was like, no, we got to have these pointers in there. We're missing these pointers. And so we ended up at an hour and 8 minutes. And some of the stuff that didn't make it in part 2, we're going to slide into part 3, because those were a lot of the teaching things and we'll probably talk about that. But that's kind of how we had to make some hard decisions, right? Because you want everything in there. You love everything. But you got to think about people's attention spans too. If it gets too long, they may lose interest. They may just check out. So, and one thing I found is people will take it in doses, right? They'll watch little bits at a time and maybe even come back to it, watch it again. And so I think that seems to work. This workflow is definitely working for the 3 of us. That's for sure.
Wow, awesome. That's very cool to hear. As I mentioned, as someone who's done video editing myself, to hear that you guys can just pass the editing file back and forth because you have the footage all on both of your computers. And that sounds like a very fluid, nimble editing process, despite the fact that you guys are hours and hours away from each other by land. Very, very cool. The one thing that we haven't touched on in terms of how these actually get created is the fact that these are crowdfunded. And I definitely don't want to glaze over that, because I feel like that plays a huge role in, certainly the fact that they even get to be created, but how they get to be created and what each of your connection is to the audience that, supports these films. So hearing from any of you, whoever wants to take this one, I can imagine all of you would have your own perspectives on this, but what does it mean to you to be able to crowdfund these films? And, what are the challenges, but also what are the things that make it special and make it exciting? Maybe we haven't heard from Dan in a few minutes. So Dan, if you'd like to take that first, and then we can hear from the others.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to maybe mention a few things. I know Bill has been more instrumental in the crowdfunding part of it, but the idea with the crowdfunding, of course, is if people value these films, we are releasing them for free for the world, and it's just a way for them to support something that is that they find is beneficial. So the way that these films are funded, we have the crowdfunding. We also have Gaia. There is some revenue there, and YouTube royalties and that type of thing. Another thing I'd like to mention is we have a membership area on YouTube as well, which people can become members of the Awaken the World film channel, and that goes directly to supporting the film as well. So we have all these different ways. Even though we're giving it away for free, there are there are hard costs on these films, which are unlike the ones that I do on my own, which are just me in the basement working away. These guys go out and they have flights, they have hotels, and to do these interviews. So all of that is necessary. There's an energy that we hope to get back in order to fuel the future films. So for me, the crowdfunding just feels right. It feels like a way for there to be an exchange between the viewers and what we're doing.
Yeah, I'll sort of tag onto that. for the crowdfunding because the Center for Awakening is a 501c3. And our board, when I first told them about this project, I asked them if they would allow the Center for Awakening to raise money and pass it on to cover the costs of travel and lodging and the cost of the interviews. The editors haven't been paid. None of what we do has been paid, and because we really feel that we're paying it forward. We're paying it forward because it has a greater purpose than our own. It has a purpose to help humanity awaken to its true nature, and we all have a heart for that. And our board of directors at the Center for Awakening is really excited about it. Has stood beside us to support that. So they're just allowing. Sometimes we get big checks that come in that go to the center, to the Awakening Mind Films, that allowed us, like last year, to be able to go to Europe and India to do filming. And it inspired other films that are in the pipeline right now that I'm super excited about. We have part three that Leif is talking about. We also have a lot of really great content from interviewing swamis in Rishikesh and Tiruvannamalai, India. And that whole trip inspired another whole documentary film that's going to be uniquely and devoted to Ramana Maharshi. And so that came in just from our mine and Leif's trip to India to see if India was a piece of the puzzle that was to be to come through this process.
Mm, thank you for sharing that. That's something that I definitely have been curious about is what these experiences traveling have been like and maybe what they've opened you up to. Leif, jumping off of what Bill just shared about this documentary that sort of this process led to, and you traveling to India, can you share about what that has been like and kind of what inspirations it led to and really just what the experience has been like for you?
Going on our first trip, right? We went out to California, and it was so wonderful. And that was really getting those interviews. And the other ones were a little more local, but when we got them all together, we're like, yeah, we got to film here. This is it. And so we had something to really start from, right? And then, some other money came in, and we're able to go to Europe. And that was phenomenal, going to, Sicily and England and Amsterdam. And that was just so fun traveling around with Bill. I just love it. And then for part 3, we went to India. And India is the most, well, it's just such an amazing place coming from a Western background to a country like that. It was just phenomenal going to Rishikesh and all the other places we went to. And it really, what we're doing is we're going around the world. We're getting these viewpoints and bringing them back into putting them into one place, into one film series. And like I was saying earlier, they're all the same. We're getting a lot of the same stuff. It's not like we're getting different viewpoints. This is it. Everyone's pointing to the same thing here. And that's what I find so reassuring, is that everyone's saying the same thing. We're not going off bounds here. This is good stuff. And so that's that part of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And really excited just with you sharing kind of all this traveling that you guys have done. And I can imagine that even though you say that it's, they're saying all the same thing, it's going to be the same thing that everybody's pointing to. I'm sure also that the new experiences that you guys have had traveling to India, bringing in a new part of the world and new teachers into the fold for this, I think will come through as well. And I can imagine audiences will really benefit from it. It's kind of like, as you guys were saying earlier, particularly Dan, that like the form changing doesn't matter so much as far as the fact that everything's pointing to the same truth, but the form can be helpful, or the many variety of forms can be helpful so that people have their own entry into whatever it is that a particular teacher's pointing to. So I think something that I want to do now is zoom out just a little bit. I want to ask you guys, and maybe we'll go backwards from that, because Leif, I know you've talked about how you've kind of been in a place of learning, and I want to ask you, in making these films, what you talked about when you're doing the interview that you often will be in a vibrational state. But even zooming out from that, in reflecting, what have you learned or perhaps remembered about awakening, about your practice from creating these documentaries with these guys?
That's a great question, and it's like the evolution of this series is the evolution of my spiritual path. Kind of, what is awakening, right? We start out asking that question.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? And I didn't know, and now I do. And so it's like we answered that question. At least we tried to. We give you enough, information to kind of, understand it. And then, we get into the part two. We didn't know what to call it. Dan came up with the mind unveiled kind of later into it. And we're like, all right, it's the mind. The mind is the problem here. The mind is what's in the way. If we get the mind out of the way, then we can get towards awakening. And so that was part two. And then now part three is really the next part that I'm excited about is, how do you awaken, right? How do you, what are there any techniques, any practices, any things that you can do to make an awakening happen to you? And I can't wait to get into that, because that's where I am in my journey. So to be continued, right? Well, I guess we'll just push that downstream a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that, I was certainly going to ask, what do folks have to look forward to? And it's just great to hear it from you, because you're someone who also is, like, okay, what's next, so that's great to hear. Bill and Dan, I've been talking to Leif a lot about what these films have done for his practice, and how that experience has formed over the course of creating these documentaries. As Leif did mention, he thinks of you both as teachers for him. And I would love to hear from you two, what is the process of creating these documentaries like for your practice? Because Dan, you actually did speak on the film interviewed, but both of you could be interviewed for these films easily again and again and again. So, Bill, let's start with you. Could you speak to sort of the way that it has connected to your practice and your own path in your life as well?
To go back to Leif saying that, Dan and I are teachers, or actually what he said is mentors. And I would say that, when we went up to meet Dan, it was Leif and Eric and I went up to meet Dan. We knew immediately when we met him in person, he needs to be in the film. He definitely needs to be a cast person. He's an embodiment of the message. And it was very obvious to us. I've come to know Dan very well since then, and I've seen what happens to him. He has a transfiguration experience that happens in his teaching presentation. So Dan just mirrors what all of the interviews that we've watched, many of the interviews, not all of them, but many of them have, they somehow consciousness comes in and speaks what wants to be spoken. And Leif, he and Eric, or whoever the camera crew is, they capture it on film. And it's very exciting to watch and be part of. And for me personally, I began, I almost have a meditation experience going through the questions. And then when we have the interviews, every single time we have the interviews, I feel like this interview is just validating the truth of my own experience. It's validating, and I'm going deeper and deeper and deeper into a permanent understanding for what we're pointing to. So I just get fuller and fuller and fuller, and it allows me to have a higher certainty, even and a deeper expression of my own direct experience of awakening. And so we're giving, but we're getting way, way more in return. I mean, we're getting we get and we give, and it feels like a two-way highway transmission.
Wow, that absolutely resonates. Dan, please, anything you want to share related to that?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. So for me, I would say, there's many levels in my own kind of practice or my own life that sort of mirror what we've been exploring here. So that to me, it's like a feedback mechanism. As sometimes people talk about art imitating life, life imitating art. This is literally that. It's for me, like being part of it and absorbing the teachings of all these amazing teachers. I find when I'm in a position to give pointers, doing retreats or whatever it is, there's been a huge deepening of my own knowledge and my own ability to teach. I find myself using little things that I might have picked up from Rupert or Locke Kelly, just things that have landed in my own understanding for my own deepening in my own practice. And sometimes just the process of working on a film, like you are sort of refining, a way to convey these things. And by doing that, there is a clarity or a deepening that happens within yourself as well. So, on The Mind Unveiled, it's about understanding the mechanism of the mind, how, we come to, this present moment, and then the mind, somehow this ego mind is a resisting of what is in the moment. And, the filmmaking process is no different. Life is no different than what happens on the meditation cushion and, in the self-inquiry dyad process. We have these challenges that come up, these different things. And so to me, the mechanism of what's happening in the mind is reflected in how we create these films and also how we live life. And so to me, the whole thing it's not separate from life. It is life.
Yeah, I also want to give a shout out to Dan's partner, Lil. She is an amazing. Nobody sees her, but her music score is in the background of a lot of the film, and so thank you, Lil, for being part of this and in partnership with Dan over there. She's an amazing support for everything that we do, as my wife is, and as Leif's wife is too. So just giving them a shout out because they're do it.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, I'd like to second that. We've had incredible support from those around us, and just personally, Lila has been, her voice and her synergy with the project has been amazing, and just our partners' capacity to to watch these films, quite often multiple times, and offer feedback as well. It's just invaluable to the process.
Wow. Well, thank you guys for giving such transparent, thoughtful answers to these questions. And I'm sure I'm not alone when I say that I really appreciate getting to hear just what it is actually like to create, or maybe as you were mentioning earlier, to facilitate the creations of these films. You did mention a little bit about, what folks can look forward to going forward into part three, but I want to just give each of you a chance, whoever feels called, to share what you're most excited about when it comes to part three, and any details that, whether logistical or more intellectual, on part of part three, that our audience can look forward to.
Hmm.
Um, may-
I'll speak for a minute on that. Part three feels like it's going to be a how to awaken in a much closer direct experience way, experiential, and what can I do to ready or to assist the experience to make it fertile, to make what can I do to support my own awakening experience. This is what I'm hoping will be conveyed through part three and any other films that we do. But for part three, I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to convey a direct experience to the audience.
Maybe I'll jump in on that one. So yeah, I for me I have a couple things that I'm working on now. So the Awakening Mind Part 3 and the Samadhi Part 4 are really both about the same thing essentially, but we have different sort of approaches or different ways that we'll be conveying. So in Samadhi Part 4, it is about the practices. And it's sort of it's mysterious because it is sort of a practiceless practice. All of these techniques are leading us ultimately into just being, into presence and non-doing. So that really, it's really looking at the different traditions and how there are all these traditions of meditation and prayer and yoga, and how they're all sort of bringing us into this present moment essentially, and so eventually we abandon those techniques to they can be beautiful stepping stones on our journey, but but in Awakening Mind Part 3, we're going to be taking the viewer through it in a little bit different way. So we're going to be offering, sort of tracking the awakening experience through the film in a way that is maybe more personal, more. And we actually don't. This is the beauty of it. So some of the creation of part 2, there were parts that were about practice, and Leif intuitively felt that those parts weren't really meant to be in part 2. They were meant to be in part 3. So he sort of took those out. So they're waiting there to be part of that, and then for the rest of it, there are some unknowns. I think part of it, what I love about this process is that we start out with a plan and ideas, but we also know that there's going to be an evolution and a following of our intuition and energy as we actually delve into the process and the filming, and whatever we capture for that will be part of that.
Yeah, and I guess I'll follow up with that a bit. A lot of the stuff we're talking about, a lot of these teachings, they've been around a really, really long time. It's not like we're really saying anything new. And if you read the comments, people are like, but people have been talking about this for thousands of years. Well, yeah, they have, and now the internet is so powerful that these ideas can reach a lot further. And I guess what we're trying to do is put it in a form that makes it a little maybe easier to digest, or for people who haven't had these or have learned these ideas yet. This is a way to get introduced to them, and we want to be respectful of that. That's one of the reasons we wanted to go to India, was to go to the source. A lot of this stuff evolved from India, and it's spread throughout the world since then, and we want to respect that. And it's this, like, and also what Dan was saying, we don't know what's going to happen in part 3. There are interviews that haven't happened yet. We have a few that we've already done, but there's still a lot more. Well, not saying a lot more, but we have a few more we need to get, and so we don't know how it's going to shape out. And that's the fun. That's the beauty of it. And so that's what I guess we'll all discover together.
That's great. Well, I certainly look forward to discovering it when I get to watch it. You guys, again, thank you so much for each just, really being here with me and answering these questions that I'm sure I'm not alone in having for you guys. I do want to give each of you a chance to talk about, other than part 3, what's next, what you're up to. I know I chatted with you guys a little bit beforehand about some things going on, but I want to give you an opportunity to talk about where people might be able to learn more about what's going on in collaboration with Awakening Mind. And maybe, Bill, I can give you the chance to speak on that first and then hear from the others.
I'm really excited about a new series that we're starting this month in August called A Mind Awake. And it's going to be a monthly webinar meeting type teaching where one of the cast members, starting with Dan in the month of August, will give a live teaching, an hour and 15 minutes or 90 minutes, a direct experience teaching that will bring the audience into an experience based on the teaching that comes from awakentheworld.com, from Dan's particular skill set. And he's an amazing teacher. I've been in his week-long I Am retreats. I've driven up to Canada a couple of times and been in his intensives, his self-inquiry intensives. This guy, he's got the stuff to take people all the way to the experience of awakening. I've seen it many, many times. It's like popcorn, watching people wake up like popcorn. So I'm really excited about that. And also I'm excited that Dan is gonna kick it off in the month of August. And then my wife, Lisa Natoli, who is also in part 1 and part 2 of the film, she's an amazing teacher. And she's going to kick off, she's going to do the month of September. She's going to give us another teaching, direct experience. She's very, very popular to mostly women, but men too. And so I'm excited about that. And then we also have Jan Fraser, who is, in my mind, she's a living sage of the ancient traditions. She is, oh my God, she lives in the mountains of Vermont. And when Leif and I went up to film her, we felt like we had gone back in time, 100 years or so. It was so authentic. And she is such a great, great teacher. She's well known around the world. And we're going to continue to do that every month as a crowdfunding. It's going to be a donation-based project that we're going to produce every month. And we're going to put it right here on Dan's YouTube channel so that I think you'll be able to watch it live on a donation base, but you're also going to be able to watch it in Dan's member area on his YouTube channel. And then we have the conferences that are coming up in November that are filled with cast members from these first 2 films. And I'm very excited about that. So we have some really great stuff available for everyone, for the audience that love these films so much. We're going to be able to give them an experience, a live experience where they'll be able to ask the filmmakers, I mean, the cast members like Dan and like Jan and Lisa and many others, Amoda Ma, Shakti. They'll all be in these different venues that we have set up, and they'll be able to be in their sessions and ask them questions, put their hand up and ask them questions. So it's very exciting. It's going to be amazing.
Wow, that is a lot to look forward to. I'm very, very excited. Thank you for sharing that. And, in relation to that, I know that, Dan, so obviously you're going to be teaching at this first one in August, which, assuming, depending on when this interview is going live, very, very soon for folks. Can you speak to, what's next for you in that regard? Or I know also Samadhi Part 4 is something you're working on. Whatever you'd like to share about what's coming up next for you.
Sure. Yeah, for me, it seems like there's just so much synergy between all of these different things that are happening. It's really exciting, like what Bill just mentioned. The conference and these teaching opportunities. To me, it's just an incredible synergy between what's happening with Awakening Mind Films and the Awaken the World. All the stuff that's happening in our world as well. So we have, for those who don't know, just ongoing resources there. So we have, daily meditation, silent meditation in different time zones, little groups happening every day. We have an amazing course that has come into being where if people really want to do a deep dive, if they want to take, 7 days, it's called the 7-day I Am retreat. People, if they can take 7 days out of their life and really go single-pointedly into a deep inner investigation, that's available on the Awaken the World website. We've got all kinds of stuff in the works, like we've got an I Am app for self-inquiry in the works, for doing dyad self-inquiry with partners, which is going to be really cool. We've got monthly happenings on the website as well. So so wherever you are on your path, if you're ready for the deep dive, that course is available. We also have these the Samadhi guided meditation series, which is guided meditations for your practice. It's a 4-part series, which takes you from preliminary practices with the breath all the way to direct inquiry, and that's available for free on the Awaken the World website as well. So all of that, I'm kind of excited about offering all of it in all these different ways, and just seeing that the synergies. And it's amazing what Bill has put together. I can hardly keep up sometimes with what he's all these conferences and opportunities. So it's so amazing to merge these worlds and just see what happens as a result.
That's great. Thanks so much for sharing, Dan. Also, lots to look forward to, and that people can access right now, right after they watch this. So thank you so much for sharing that. Leif, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about, share any more about what you're excited about and what's coming up next for you. I know that you guys were talking a little bit earlier about a Ramana documentary. So if you want to share anything about that or anything else that's coming up next for you.
I'd love to. And when we went to India, we went to Ramana Ashram, and I was so moved by just being there, being in that place. Even though Ramana wasn't there, he passed away in 1950-ish. His energy is still there, and he was just such a beautiful man. And the more I read about him, the more I want to share his story with the world, because I don't think a lot of people know it. And he's almost in direct contact with us. He's not he was alive not that long ago. It's not like Buddha or Jesus that we had to, thousands of years of their teaching has been, who knows, lost, manipulated. We're not sure. But Ramana's teaching is so pure and it's so beautiful that I really want to work on that. And that's also going to be a part of part 3. Which I'm so excited about. And, we don't have a name for it. We don't know how long it's going to be. We don't know. We know someone who's in it, but we don't know totally who's in it. So that's what I'm working on. And I'm really excited about that. But I do just want to say thanks to a few people, particularly my family, my wife, my mother, my brother, and my other brother and my sister. They're dragged along this spiritual path too. They unwillingly, well, maybe willingly, they're like, this is cool what you're into. And so they've just been so supportive. And all the comments we get are so encouraging. So thanks everyone out there just for being a part of this too. And you're really encouraging us to keep going. So thanks everybody from the bottom of my heart.
Great. Thank you so much, Leif. So Bill and Dan, and Leif, if there's anything else, I just want to give you all a chance for anything you want to leave us with before we sign off here.
Yeah, I would say that it is our joy to support you in your awakening experience. And this is what we're here for. We're here to support you, the world, wherever you are in your awakening experience. And thank you for for trusting us and this film.
Yeah, I'd like to also say it is a privilege to be part of people's journeys in this way and this role, and to be working with these guys, and to be part of all of this. And thank you, everyone.
And I'd just like to say special thanks to Bill and Dan for allowing me to be a part of this journey. It is so exceptional to meet all these incredible teachers. And like I was saying, it's paralleling my own spiritual growth and the path that I'm on. And I'm so grateful for that. And so thank you guys for allowing me to tag along.
Yeah. And we want to give a really big thanks for Jack Rome for your excellent interview skills and for putting this together for Awakening Mind Films, and what this is going to mean for the audience to be able to meet the filmmakers of these amazing projects that we're working on. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
yeah.
Chuck.
Absolutely. I didn't anticipate getting to give my own closing statement before we sign off, but I think I mentioned this to Bill when we were talking beforehand, and just so that who's watching knows, I am a learner. I'm somebody who benefits in my own practice from these films and from the material that these teachers put together. And it is a dream come true to be able to align the skills that I have, the passion that I have, with something like this. Interviewing folks and having conversations, that's just something I love to do. I love to be able to do this exact thing, but to do it about this is a dream come true. So thank you guys so much. I look forward to having more opportunities to give our audience, you who's watching, the opportunity to learn more and to have more of that direct experience that we are talking about, and hope you can join us for all the wonderful things that we have going on. So one more time, I just want to say thank you so much, Bill, Leif, and Dan, for your time, for your answers, for your work to make this possible, for your facilitation. For you who's listening, thank you for listening, for watching. And, if you'd like to learn more about these guys, about these films, about what's going on, you can visit awakeningmindfilms.com, and there will be a donate button there. And if you click on that donate button, you'll be able to support the projects through the crowdfund on GoFundMe. So yeah, that's it for us here today. And thank you so much for watching.